welcome to Star Wars Warts and All, a podcast where we discuss all the things we love about Star Wars, warts and all. My name's Will. Joining me again are my good friends Ben.
Hello.
Bill.
Hi.
And Chris.
Put Captain Solo in the cargo hold.
Cargo. It's a little Bostonian almost.
I'm gonna see how many weeks in a row I can do a Boba Fett quote.
Okay. All right. Well, as
Better
they
than
say,
my impression.
bounty hunting is a complicated profession. So tonight we're going to break down some of the major players as we gear up for talking about the War of the Bounty Hunters next week, I guess. That was a terrible intro.
There will be a substantial reward for the one who finds the Millennium Falcon. You are free to use any methods necessary, but I want them alive. No disintegrations.
As you wish.
Let's start off by talking about the bounty hunter code that they kind of briefly talk about in The Mandalorian.
So they're not just mindless hunters and killers. They actually have some sort of a thing to go by.
Oh, you mean they just mentioned the fact that there's a code? They didn't
Well, there's the whole guild thing, and there's clearly guild
Right.
rules, and they've got the chain codes and the little tracking beacons and whatnot. So there's more to it than... It's not just like a Wild West wanted poster on the wall and you go get them kind of thing.
Right. And they talk about it a lot in the War of the Bounty Hunters and the Bounty Hunter comic book.
Yeah, just wrapped up, the War of the Bounty Hunters, I think.
Yeah.
So wait, let's just get that out of the way too. So the War of the Bounty Hunters is a big comic book, Marvel Comics, Star Wars crossover event where all of the Star Wars comics that Marvel was printing for the last 3 months tied into this event that takes place between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week. But we figured this week we would just kind of run through who the bounty hunters are and just basic background about bounty hunters that appear in this thing, right?
Yeah. And it's a great arc, and I can't wait to talk about it next week. But the Bounty Hunter Code is pretty simple. It's you don't kill other hunters, and you don't steal other hunters' bounties. That's it. Those are pretty much the big ones.
Sounds like that code is probably broken pretty regularly.
constantly.
So it's
constantly.
it's surprising. It's surprising of who breaks it and who doesn't. There's people who just break it all the time and they don't care about it. They're not really looked in high favor amongst the other bounty hunters, and I'll get into that a little bit later. The other rule is you cannot ask the client what they're going to do with a bounty that you brought it back alive.
Right,
which
and that was mentioned in The
Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And speaking of The Mandalorian, I mean, just because of his popularity, because of the show, and Boba Fett are probably the two most famous bounty hunters in Star Wars.
Yeah, I think that's...
To mainstream, yeah.
Right.
To mainstream. Anybody you ask, and they'll be like, oh, that's the guy from the show, and everything like that. But if you start talking about some of these other bounty hunters, you might not get that kind of recognition.
Right. Let's start with the most recognizable rando bounty hunters, because in The Empire Strikes Back, there's that famous scene on the bridge of the Star Destroyer where there's a lineup of bounty hunters.
Yes. Their whole goal is to find the Millennium Falcon, or Falcon, as Darth Vader says.
Oh, yeah. Han says it too.
And
that's how
bring
it's
them
pronounced.
back alive.
It is pronounced Millennium Falcon. Just like Savage, Oppress. I mean, it's the same thing.
The Millennium Falcon. Oh, it's named after the bird? What bird? What are you talking about? There's no falcons in Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly.
So those bounty hunters are... The first one you see, and you see his clawed foot, is Bosk. He's the Trandoshan.
His toes
wizard.
peeking over the top.
First one all the way on the right, correct?
Are we really getting that specific?
We're getting that specific, Chris.
I don't know, because Forlom is behind him, but a little bit to the right, so you never know. But we'll get there as well.
I'm getting top billion. Get out of here.
So Bosk has a pretty major role. He is a Trandoshan bounty hunter, which are the reptilian people. We kind of saw Trandoshans a little bit in The Mandalorian, that first episode.
Yeah, we talked about them last week, too, because they show up in the Book of Boba Fett trailer.
they're going to be in Book of Boba Fett. Bosk himself was a big character, or not a big character, but he was a character in the Clone Wars cartoon series. He was kind of a mentor to Boba Fett.
Right.
And was with him in his attempt to try to assassinate Mace Windu.
Yeah, and wasn't he with him again later on? Like they were in prison together?
There was a couple times. There was a couple times that they were together.
Like they were pretty much, a lot of times in the Clone Wars when you saw Boba Fett, he was associated with Bosk. Like they were kind of frequent partners, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. He doesn't have a lot about him. Honestly, a lot of these bounty hunters really don't have too much information about them.
Bosk is probably one of the more frequently seen of these kind of B-list bounty hunters, because he's in like Battlefront and Battlefront 2.
He's the only one in Clone Wars too, really, right? I mean, out of these guys,
I think so.
Dengar.
Dengar.
Dengar was as well.
Dengar,
is it? Did he?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember, but probably yes.
First time you ever hear Dengar speak, and he has like an Australian accent, and it threw me off.
Yeah.
But Bosk, he is one of the bounty hunters that will never break the code at all whatsoever.
Where
the
do you
code
get
is
that?
there for a reason.
Where do you get that background from?
So that is in the Bounty Hunters comic book. Just before the War of the Bounty Hunters, in the actual Star Wars Bounty Hunters series, Bosk kind of talks about it. So Trandoshan's god is called the Scorekeeper. A female Trandoshan that
I remember that.
will grant them, a warrior's... If they die a warrior's death, then she'll grant them a place in the everlasting hunt.
Right. It seems like Trandoshans as a whole, as a species, are just hunters. Like, that's what they do.
Yeah, aren't they known for, like, tracking and enslaving Wookiees? Isn't that their big thing?
Right.
Yeah, they're one of the reasons why the Wookiees were enslaved by the Empire.
Wasn't there a Clone Wars arc where Trandoshans captured a bunch of Padawans and, like, hunted them?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so they're all about the hunt.
Yeah.
So no surprise that
the bigger the prey, the more points they get from the Scorekeeper. And Bosk is one of those people that if you break that code, the Scorekeeper will frown upon you, and it'll be it's not honorable. So he's one of the ones that never breaks the code.
Gotcha.
Doesn't he have some kind of line in Battlefront where he says something about No. I swear there's one where he says something about the Scorekeeper. But
yeah, I believe there's a couple, like he talks about the Scorekeeper.
Referencing the Scorekeeper.
He smiles upon me
talking
or
about
something.
the game's programming. Telling you that.
Correct.
That's why it's a clever reference that way. It works on multiple levels.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it for Bosk. Just he's a lizard, he's brutal, but he respects the code.
All right.
Another one that lives by the code is Dengar, who is a Corellian, like Han.
Who I forgot was in this scene until I looked at screen cap of it again. Yeah, he was there.
Yeah, he's there.
He might be cut off if you watch it on the letterbox version. I don't know.
I think so.
Or an old TV.
Probably informs his character later on when he's like desperate for notoriety. He's always like, I'm famous. Yeah. I'm not some nobody. Look at me. I'm Dengar.
They cut me out of the TNT version of this.
The only thing that's known about Dengar is he's been having bits and pieces of him replaced after because he used to be a swoop bike racer.
Oh yeah, is that still his backstory?
That's still his backstory. They kind of go a little bit into it in the War of the Bounty Hunters because he teams up with another bounty hunter for the whole thing.
All right.
And he was mangled in that.
So that's why he's got like a head wrap kind of thing going on, right?
Yeah, he's covered in a head wrap. He's got like a mechanical chest plate and stuff like that. But
right. Now, not to get ahead of this story, but isn't there like a speculation that there's a character who appears in Rise of Skywalker that might be Dengar in the future, and he's like completely robotic except for a really creepy looking face. I can't remember the name of the thing.
That's just because his name is Den, D-E-N. Deng. And yeah, he kind of has the same build as Dengar, but his like head looks like a melted popsicle.
Where is this?
Yeah. I'll have to hang on, I'll get the visual picture.
Yeah,
It's in the visual.
It's not a spoiler
dictionary,
for War of the Bounty Hunters or anything, so I'd like to know.
No. I don't know.
Was it in the what planet was that? Where they
Jimmy with the bar? And
Yeah. He was in the
Bobby
background,
Yeah.
Oh.
right over the shoulder of the maestro himself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, here he is. Rothgar Deng.
Rothgar
Deng.
Yeah,
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, it's
because his
possible.
head shape is right.
Well, it says Rothgar is an old and experienced Corellian bounty hunter who is likely operating under an alias.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So it's
definitive,
possible.
I think,
Alias.
maybe a little bit.
It's possible. They don't go into any of that in War of the Bounty Hunter. I'm sure they'll set that up at some point.
He's been subjecting himself to cybernetic replacements in a poorly planned bid to live and work forever. That's what you were just describing.
Yeah,
So-
that's
nail
it.
on the head.
he's like the next General Grievous.
But ugly and clunky.
He's been bounty hunting since before the start of the Clone Wars, and he even continues all the way straight through to the New Republic era, where he tries to kind of not retire, but because he doesn't want to, but he tries to become a mentor to this other bounty hunter that just wants nothing to do with him. Curiel Swift.
Right, I remember that little side story
Yeah.
in Aftermath books.
It's possible there's a big gap between those points that
Right.
it could be him, old popsicle head.
He'd be pretty old at that point too. I mean, he's just a Corellian. It's not like he's
Well, he's just a head in a
long-lived.
robot
Right.
body, though. So
that's
Right.
true.
it's an old head.
Maybe he found the same technology that Grievous had.
But he's also one of the only people to ever go toe to toe with Chewbacca in like an actual melee fight and not get just absolutely decimated. He actually wins that
And
fight.
when was that from? What was that from?
It's in the Bounty Hunter series. Pretty much everything that's gonna be referenced is in the Bounty Hunter series leading up to
Comics.
War of the Bounty Hunter.
Yeah.
Just like all the other bounty hunters, pretty much everything that we know about them that's canon-wise has come from bounty hunters in the War of the Bounty Hunters.
Right.
There's not much else other than that. So these next two are a pair of bounty hunters. And there's Zuckus and 4LOM.
As a young man, I always thought it was Forlom.
Right.
I called him Forlom for years.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. Until I read it in the
4LOM.
comic, and Zuckus calls him 4LOM every single time. And it throws me off because when I
bothers
read
me.
it, I
should be
read it as Lam, but it's
Yeah.
LOM.
Well, I think it stands for the love of money.
That was the story. I don't know how true that is. It's one of those internet myths that's been around
Yeah.
since before the internet, so I don't know.
So he's a love of money droid. That's a thing.
No, George
He's
Lucas
a-
created it because it's like a toy,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, it's a toy. That's brilliant. I like it even
So
more
then-
now.
Yeah, that's probably Legends, but canon, he's an LOM droid, which is droids created by Zuckus's people, who are the Gans, who are an insect race, and that's why 4LOM has that insect head droid thing.
Is that an LOM droid in Mandalorian?
Yeah, that's what I was going to
Episode.
say too. I don't know. It could be. What's his name?
The guy that Richard Ayoade
Yeah.
plays.
Don't remember the choice.
Zero.
Is there Zero? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Q90.
The
Q90.
droid that flies them to the prison
Yeah,
ship in season
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And then Frog Lady
gets-
reprograms his head to talk.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He could be a newer model. He doesn't look like 4LOM. They're more
I thought he
like
did.
they're more like insectoid looking because they're modeled after the Gans who made them. They're a pair only in the fact that Forlom teams up with Zuckus because Zuckus is what they call a Gand Findsman, which is kind of like a pseudo force sensitive tracker. He's got what's that ability that Ezra has where he could like touch something? Quinlan Voss has it too.
Yeah. Psycho. No. Talked about it.
It's something like that.
All he has to do is pretty much touch an item and he can track somebody.
Is this
Psychometry. It is
yeah,
psychometry.
okay.
Psychometry. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, he might not be the best hunter, like actual physical fighter,
Right.
but He's a great sharpshooter, and he's a great tracker.
Gotcha.
So Forlom and him team up, and Forlom is more like the muscle.
Gotcha. Speaking of droids.
And then the last one on that list is IG-88, which, legends-wise, I think he was probably the more famous one because he...
Yeah, there's a lot there.
There was a
Shadows of the
lot.
Empire.
Right, yeah.
Became part of the Death Star at some point, right?
He was the Death Star too.
Bounty Hunter's book, yeah.
What? Okay.
He became the
Good
Death
riddance.
Star, yeah.
Yep, no, that's too much.
Well, and wasn't there part of the story like there were multiple copies or something of him?
Yeah.
IG-88 A, B, C, D.
And one of them, like, so in Cloud City, when C-3PO goes into that room and gets blasted by the stormtroopers, you see an IG droid's head like in a pile at one point. And so I think that got worked into that Bounty Hunter's book as that was one of the copies, and it got destroyed.
All of the IG heads can be found in cantinas across the galaxy for some reason. Yeah. The taps on in the cantinas are shaped the same as the IG heads.
Yeah.
Now, here's my question. I don't know if you even have the answer for this, Ben. Why are these droids being programmed? Because IG-11, who we see in The Mandalorian, is another bounty hunter droid. Who's programming droids to be bounty hunters? Who profits from that? Why is that a thing? I don't understand.
So they actually do explain it in Forlom's backstory, which I want to say is in a children's book. I can't. Star Wars Adventures comic.
Okay.
Don't they have a one shot?
They do, but they don't really go into the backstory with the one shot. It's more to tie into the War of the Bounty Hunters.
Right, yeah.
4LOM's old master told him about a planet where droids revolted.
Oh, right. Okay.
And he kind of thought about that and then broke his programming and became a bounty hunter. Same could be said for pretty much any of the bounty hunter droids. They're not programmed to be bounty hunters. They're just droids who have overwritten their programming.
Right.
Most of the time, the IG line was created as bodyguards that eventually became, bounty hunters and stuff like that. And those are pretty much the main B-team bounty hunters.
Yeah, those are the guys who appear on film.
Right.
All in The Empire Strikes Back, all at once.
And in the Outer Rim board game.
Yeah. Right.
Yes. Dengar is not in that yet. He will be.
True.
With the expansion pack.
No one knows that for sure. Have they released that yet?
Yeah.
He's on the front of the box.
Okay. Tangent.
Yes. Now, they did introduce a bunch of bounty hunters or bounty hunters that reintroduced. Yeah. Like the bounty hunter Bosch.
Is that how you say that?
Boosh?
Boosh?
Bausch?
I thought it was Bausch.
Boush. It's the double H. There's no human language that uses the double H, I don't think.
No, it's the Ubis language.
Yes, Ubis.
Most famously, his armor was used by Princess Leia in Return of the Jedi to sneak into Jabba's palace.
Yeah, that's the...
He gets a one shot story. He made appearances in Forces of Destiny.
Yes, yeah. I remember Forces of Destiny where Leia. So Forces of Destiny was a little made for girls cartoon series that was put out on YouTube. You could watch it on Disney Plus, and it's got a certain charm to it.
Yeah, I like it.
And it's in canon. But there's a little story about Leia meeting up with Maz Kanata to help rescue Han Solo. She's gonna get her a disguise. Basically, she helps her defeat this bounty hunter so that Leia could wear the Ubi's armor into Jabba's palace.
Yes, and that kind of is explained in his one shot as well, that he is an Ubis, which is a creature that hails from the planet Uba 4.
No, they must have a high birth rate in Uba 4.
Uba.
Plenty of healthy babies being born every day.
The mothers all die from the lack of will to
sadness.
Glass of Ubas. Yeah. Somebody get me an Uber over here. Need an Uber. We're losing her.
But that's the thing. They're not allowed to. They're not allowed to leave their planet. If they do, they're exiled. They're never allowed to come back. He's exiled because.
Is this all from his one shot?
Yeah, so they go into his backstory a lot in his one shot.
It's a long issue.
He was originally planning on leaving and doing his own thing, and people were getting mad, and he ended up being the instrument and what destroyed his entire village. So people exiled for that him for that anyway. So he's like, whatever, I'm just gonna leave anyway.
I gotcha. All right, so yeah, not welcome back. Pretty much a bad dude then.
Yeah, he's
so
a really bad guy. He's that kind of bounty hunter that's just like, if you pay me more, I'll go kill my client.
And he himself actually appears in this War of the Bounty Hunters.
No,
it's a one shot.
Oh, okay.
It has nothing to do with War of the Bounty Hunters. They just threw that in there. Threw that in there just to explain what happens. And he ends up getting killed after blackmailing the Black Sun crime syndicate, which is all hush-hush. Nobody knows that happened. And that's why Leia's able to walk into Jabba's palace wearing his armor. Nobody's any of the wiser because they think Bosch is still out there doing his thing.
Right.
But in reality, he's actually dead.
What do they actually look like under the armor?
They don't show that, and they make it specifically clear that they have no idea what these people look like. Because there's a scene where they all have their helmets off in like a cantina and they're talking, and it's just cut just enough so that you only see their necks down. You don't see anything else. So they don't ever show what these guys look like.
To be determined.
Another bounty hunter that was brought back was Valence.
Brought back?
Yeah.
Brought back from what?
Because he was
brought back from the original Marvel Comics run from the 80s.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Is it, so I don't know how did you say that? Valence?
Valence?
I don't know.
Valence,
I thought it was
maybe?
Valence. I don't know. You could be right, but so I'm fascinated by this guy because in the original comics he was totally just a ripoff of the Terminator because he's a cyborg, and you always see him with half of his face like Schwarzenegger style torn off, so you see the red eye and the exoskeleton underneath. So it was definitely just a cash in on the popularity of Terminator, I think.
Sure.
There's a comic in this run of the War of the Bounty Hunters tie-in in the Bounty Hunters series where he's on board an Imperial Star Cruiser and the doors open and there's like steam and it's just like covering most of him. It is straight out of Terminator. I swear to you. I'll find a picture and I'll send it to you guys. Maybe we could put it up on the Insta. I don't know.
And I actually reread his reintroduction into canon because it ties in with Solo. Because young Han Solo, in the middle of the movie when he's in training to be a pilot, he's training with Valence and helps actually save him after a crash landing. And it's that crash that creates the need for Valence to be rebuilt as a cyborg by the Empire.
Yeah, I do like him as a character overall. He's
neat. He's a good anti-hero.
Torn.
Yeah, and he hates the Empire though. Absolutely,
right. That's it.
Despises them.
Well, it was the opposite for a long time. He was like diehard for the Empire until they turned their backs on him.
Right, and he's the one that actually teams up with Dengar.
Yeah, so he's pretty big in the Bounty Hunter series, so he'll definitely get a lot of play, I'm sure.
A lot of parallels to Han Solo in general too, with like leaving his home, swearing he'll return to his girlfriend, and then this whole they drift apart and all that stuff. Yeah, a lot of
becoming a cyborg.
Yeah, right.
He goes back to meet her, and she's with somebody else. His whole backstory though is really important to War of the Bounty Hunters, and we'll go into that when he teams up with a retiring bounty hunter, Nautilin named Lash. We could go into that in the War of the Bounty Hunter next week. Another character added in from Legends into canon for this series was the bounty hunter Dirge.
Right. Now, don't tell me too much about this, because I haven't read it yet, and I'm shocked that Dirge has made a reappearance, because he was in the 2D animated Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars.
Yes.
And he was, like, OP. He was unstoppable.
And yeah, I won't go into much. It's not a spoiler or anything, but I don't want to ruin for you guys. His whole thing in Legends was that if he lost a limb, he could like regrow it at will, and it would just become like this monstrous appendage.
Yeah, he's like some kind of weird alien made out of like
worms
or something. The worms that could reattach themselves, and
I think there's a point where
sizes.
he tries to engulf Obi-Wan with his body. It's weird.
He wraps him up in his worminess. It's really
so he can grow to enormous size.
Yeah, so he'll be the one fighting giant 60-foot Wookiee from that.
Does he have a species? What is he?
So they don't say in either Legends or canon.
Oh boy. Just a few more years, we'll get Baby Dirge. Just wait for it.
And he doesn't have a lot of page time, I guess you would say, in this series. So, but they do set up that he'll be back. So.
Nice.
Sounds like it could almost somehow tie into the Drengir with how they slice them and then all the tendrils and stuff form into giant sizes and stuff.
That's
I don't know
true,
somehow.
Yeah.
That's very reminiscent of it. Yeah, except for he can grow them back at any size. And he's actually in the Dr. Aphra series.
Speaking of Dr. Aphra, yeah, Dr. Aphra, I'm assuming, is a big role. She's not a bounty hunter.
She's not. She's an
But
archaeologist.
she's always sticking her nose in business, the Empire and the rebels and you name it.
Yeah,
But she's in the series.
she has her own series, and she's got a crossover tie-in.
A lot of these are very tenuous connections to the main War of the Bounty Hunter story. I know. I'm just warning you so you don't get all excited about all these people meeting and converging.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Yeah, she's not really a bounty hunter, but she does have her moments in that.
We could probably do a whole episode on her at some point. We've talked about it.
Probably.
Yeah, I need to go read her series, probably.
She grew on me a lot over the course of many comic books.
A character that was introduced, an original character introduced into canon, was a bounty hunter who is apparently better than Boba Fett. If Boba Fett isn't available, this bounty hunter is just as good, if not better. Jabba has her on retainer. Her name is Diva Lompop.
And that's why she wasn't as popular as Boba Fett.
She's a brand new race, which is a Shawnee, which are reptilian humanoids that can extend their
sounds
jaws.
Like something out of Bollywood. Diva Lompop, the Shawnee.
They're like reptilian and they can extend their jaws and eat people.
No, it sounds like Avatar. Is what it sounds like. She's got these feathers for hair that are all different colors.
Oh.
She has her moments as being the best there is, and her comic is pretty much, her being the best. And I wasn't particularly impressed with the character just because her scenes are so short, and they're kind of throwing as much as they possibly can at her to make her seem like she's the most powerful bounty hunter.
Yeah, there's always that issue if you say all right, so this is the one who's better than the character you know and love, then you really gotta make sure that works. It's
except we never see her in the future, so obviously she's not.
Right. So we'll see.
She pops up every now and then in War of the Bounty Hunters, but it's never anything crazy. There is a character. His first appearance was in Rise of Skywalker. He's actually a pretty big character for the franchise, for the War of the Bounty Hunters.
Is it about Ochi?
Ochi.
Oh yeah. So I remember being very upset because I missed his debut issue of the Darth Vader comic, and of course, since it was the first appearance of Ochi of Bastoon, the value of that comic immediately tripled to 3 times the cover price. And I was like, why? Who cares about Ochi? Nobody cares, except for the fact that it's a first appearance.
So, yeah. So, for those people who might not know, Ochi is the assassin who kills Rey's parents.
Right.
Oh, right.
But they were Palpatines anyway. They deserve to be killed. I say kill them again, if anything.
He plays a major role in the Darth Vader comic tie-ins, and it looks like he's going to play a role in the next major Star Wars comic book tie-ins or crossover event.
In a feeble attempt to make the sequel trilogy make sense.
Well, he'll be in the. They're making a book too about Lando and Luke's adventures. I'm sure he'll be featured heavily in that.
Whatever. Yeah. It's all just course correction.
Are they going to feature Vinay more? I want to know more about Vinay.
So that's pretty much it for the bounty hunters that are featured in the War of the Bounty Hunters. There are a couple others that are in the Bounty Hunter comic series that make their appearance in the series, but aren't. But there are people we can talk about next week.
I'm a little disappointed those 7 samurai ones don't show up.
From the Clone Wars. Yeah, there are a lot of random bounty hunters that appeared in the Clone Wars. But
yeah.
Or Cad Bane. What happened? What happened to him?
I'm convinced they have plans for Cad Bane.
Probably.
They've got
Bad Batch season 2.
Yeah, something like that. Or maybe a flashback in Boba Fett. Yeah. Or not a flashback. Maybe he's going to show up. Maybe they've already cast him.
Who's it going to be?
Next week. Fan castings for a guy you've never heard of before. He's got a hat, though. Who would look good in a hat
big
next
hat.
week? Warts and all.
Boring conversation anyway.
Let's throw the outro here, and then it'll be left.
Yeah. Well, now we can actually legitimately say, Ben, what are we doing next week?
So that's pretty much it for the bounty hunters that are in War of the Bounty Hunters, which next week we will actually talk about the event of the War of the Bounty Hunters and what happens when
Why are they warring?
When Boba Fett loses Han Solo and Carbonite.
I'm really psyched that they called this series War of the Bounty Hunters because it gives a reason for this whole thing to be called Star Wars. Because you've got now multiple wars going on at the same time, which is awesome.
Yeah, more than one war. Yeah, that makes
you
sense.
need multiple wars.
Now it makes sense.
Right,
it finally makes sense.
It's not Star War, Bill. It's Star Wars. Well, I guess technically there's the Clone War, and then there's the Galactic Civil War. So we already had multiple wars. But the more the better. I mean, it just makes the name fit.
All right, Chris, do your thing.
We're still plugging the social media that we don't use. Warts and all on Instagram, Twitter, also at gmail.com for any feedback or suggestions you may have for future shows.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks for listening. Bounty hunters, we don't need their scum.
Yes, sir.
There it is. I couldn't do an accent, though, apparently. So.